After leaving Auckland for California, Bowen Barn went on to spearhead the development of Facebook Marketplace, which has fast become one of the world's biggest peer-to-peer sales platforms. Now, after more than a decade in Silicon Valley, he's returned home to New Zealand with a message for other ambitious Kiwi entrepreneurs. You don't have to leave to change the world.
It's been amazing coming back, and this is something that my wife and I have been thinking about for actually a very long time. As soon as we pretty much arrive in the States, we're like, okay, yeah, one more year, and 13 years and 2 kids later, we're back now.
Yeah.
And so both from a personal perspective, but also from how much has changed for the better often.
Well, talk to us a bit about that from a professional perspective. What observations have you made about New Zealand's startup and tech environment today compared to when you left?
Yeah, so when I left, which was in 2012, the New Zealand tech industry and the environment was so vastly different that it almost feels like a different country coming back. When I left, I had just finished working at Trade Me, which obviously at the time was New Zealand's biggest company, and that was and Trade Me had some astounding stat back then where it commanded 90% of all domestic internet traffic in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of the tech industry.
Yeah.
And there were some other companies that was up and coming, but it was very, very small and very unknown. I think Xero was around, but it was very, very small. They essentially floated on the stock market to get venture capital money.
Right.
Because there was also no real venture capital industry. There was very few funds operating. And so after I finished my time at Trade Me, it really felt like my learning had quickly plateaued.
Right.
And I looked around and it felt like, well, there really isn't that many other places for me to go. Whether for me to start my own company, given how scarce capital is across the country, and also just given the lack of other alternatives, it felt very natural to really try to go for where tech is known to move fast and scale quickly, which is in Silicon Valley.
So let's talk about your journey a little bit, and then perhaps we can come back to the tech and startup scene in New Zealand as it stands today.
Yes.
And the kind of changes that you've observed over that time. So you were born in China, you were raised and educated in Auckland,
yes,
and you ended up at Facebook, of all places, overseeing Facebook Marketplace. Tell us about that experience. What did you learn from being in charge of Facebook Marketplace?
I think with Facebook Marketplace, one of the biggest learnings for me is that innovation and these new product experiences often comes not from top-down directives, but from bottom-up, and really observing what the user needs actually are and what customers and people actually want. And Marketplace is a really good example, because Facebook had, before Marketplace, it wasn't for the lack of trying. Facebook had actually tried many different attempts at different ways of getting people to transact and to have kind of more commerce type experiences, whether it was ads where you can buy stuff through, or it was I think at one point they had some loyalty experiences, and they actually even bought a company to do this. But what made Marketplace ultimately succeed is that there was actually a whole set of behavior that people were already doing on the platform, but they just weren't being well served. And it turned out that people were just using these Facebook groups, which obviously wasn't designed for buying and selling stuff, but it is the only place on Facebook where you can talk to strangers, really.
Right.
And then they just ended up using that to buy and sell stuff. Now you say, well, is that because Facebook platform is amazing? Probably not. It was because buying and selling that's what people did. And when you have 1 billion people on a platform, that's a very natural part of human behavior. And it's really about harnessing that behavior, and then channeling it and building it out into a product that Marketplace thrived in the end.
So instead of coming up with a genius kind of light bulb moment idea, you simply look at embedded human behaviours and try and find a more frictionless way for people to go about those behaviors.
Right, and I think actually many products in the world actually end up this way. And when we think about, one question I get asked a lot about is, what's the difference between how a tech company operates and how, say, a media company traditionally may operate? And one of the biggest differences is that a tech company ultimately lives or dies by how well they meet user needs every day. Every day, you get a scorecard every day at the end of the day. Should I keep using this product? And that rate of change is in terms of what the user needs actually are, is also really high. And so tech companies are forced to be very in tune with what those kind of latent needs are, and then really try to think about the product experiences. Now, when people talk about product sense and product strategy, that's really the art, is observing, hearing what people are saying, but really delving deep into the motivations and what they actually need. There's the Henry Ford quote that people love to say about the faster car. That quote doesn't mean that hearing user feedback is not important, but it doesn't take away from the importance of being really strategic and thinking about what you actually need to build. But being really close to the user is really important. And the other piece I'll add is that for companies that don't do this, they very quickly go into irrelevance. And I think that's also another piece that's in tech that's relatively unique. And so it keeps everyone very grounded and very humble. Because the minute that you have too much hubris, then you may not exist anymore.
Yeah. You don't need me to tell you that Meta, Facebook's parent company, is a controversial company, at least in some quarters. I mean, the former Facebook executive Kiwi Sarah Wynne-Williams was scathing in her criticism of the company in her book published this year. But you've been out of Meta for a few years now. How do you think about the company and its sort of greater role in society? And has the way that you think about it changed at all over the years?
I think it's a very complex company. And the caveat, first of all, is that my role in the company, I've deliberately stayed on the 0 to 1 and the areas where I saw more of the frontier type opportunities. And it's where my advice often to folks on, hey, what project you should pick in a larger company is look for low visibility, high impact projects, because those are the ones that will have the most impact.
Right.
But the one thing I will say is my view around Facebook has always been that it's somewhat of a mirror on society and on people. And that mirror is very complex, because sometimes you may like what you see, sometimes you may not like what you see. And I think it's a very complex question of what's the responsibility of what you should reflect back. And should you have, and what level of control and what level of filtering should you have on that mirror, and whose responsibility is that? And there's actually a lot of tension that are by themselves all very well intentioned and make a lot of sense by themselves, but they clash. Like, for example, if you think about the importance of having privacy over your data versus the importance of creating a more competitive market where other players can also be in the market. Turns out the mechanisms for driving that are actually very much in tension often, because in order to have to encourage more competition, then often it's about, your data should be freely taken with you, right? So it's easy for it to transfer. But then if you talk about privacy, it's all about how to make it more secure and more locked down. So if you look across the world, often it's not even just within Facebook, it's actually different government agencies disagree with each other about the best way. So that just, my point there is just to illustrate the complexity in this, in the space that Facebook occupies.
So do you think of Facebook as being a net positive in the world?
I think that, that's probably really hard to say, but I think there are certainly a lot of good and a lot of positive that Facebook has brought, and a lot of consequences that is really hard to know when you first have the product built.
Yeah, I suppose thinking about the concept of it as a kind of mirror to society, there would be some people, I'm sure, who would say that Facebook isn't merely a mirror, but that it's a force multiplier as well. That yes, it mirrors society, but actually the power of its algorithm is that it ultimately leads to polarization as well. Do you think about that, or is that? Do you think that rings true?
No. I don't have strong opinions around that. I do think I think it echoes kind of the there's a very influential book called The Medium as a Message, and I think that goes to say that how you have those information transmitted also has a feedback loop and has those effects as well.
Yeah, right.
But I think one of the things that's really hard with any products that's built by people is it's very, very difficult to kind of foresee unintended consequences, or just consequences in general. I don't need to tell you about how hard it is to understand consequences of policy changes, right? And I think when you have billions of people on a platform, those consequences can be very difficult to actually foresee.
To quantify it
and
beforehand.
Quantify it. That's right, yeah.
So in the recent congressional hearings, Mark Zuckerberg shared this fascinating data point about the ways in which social media and social media feeds are changing. So the amount of content that viewers see on Facebook today, or users see on Facebook, that has been posted by their friends is down to about 20%. On Instagram, which Meta also owns, it's down to about 10%, which is to say social media is a lot less social than it once was. What do you think that tells us about trends in digital media?
I actually think that the human need for friend-to-friend interaction hasn't changed. But I do think that the format which Facebook and Instagram is designed to do is arguably better designed for what's called unconnected content, as in public content, because really the value is entertainment, right? And so I think the need for these kind of private conversations and connection with friends just moved elsewhere. Right. I think now a lot of them has moved into messaging, a lot of them has moved into groups. And a lot of them has moved into stories.
Right.
But I think it is not untrue that, hey, if you look at a feed, that can your feed be more entertaining by not just limiting it to your friends? The answer is clearly yes, because that's the fact of what's happening today.
Yeah. But at the same time, that might have been met by, say, everyone having a WhatsApp family group chat that they didn't have 5 years ago.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you've got a young family, and that was part of your motivation, but why else did you want to be back in New Zealand after working for companies like Meta?
I think that, and this gets to what I've seen to be so different now, 13 years later, is that New Zealand's tech industry, I think, is at a really incredible time right now. And I describe it as low-key exciting, which is,
0 to 1 big impact theory,
Yeah, and I think it's kind of in a place where I think in a broader public consciousness in New Zealand at a macro level, I don't think it's still broadly known. But if you actually delve deeper and if you talk to the founders and the operators and people working in tech, there is really this amazing energy where you have multiple generations of companies and founders and operators kind of doing the reps and really building out this ecosystem. And that's really, really exciting. And one of the acid tests I actually have is that can I, in good conscience, pitch one of the New Zealand tech companies to a Silicon Valley engineer working in a startup to say, hey, if you're open to a lifestyle change, working in one of these companies would give you the same, if not better, upside. And the answer right now is absolutely yes for a few companies here. And I think that's really amazing because the answer was definitely no before. And I think that's really, really exciting. And it feels really like early days, very early days Silicon Valley, where everyone was about heads down, building something that is really valuable for customers, for users, where you have operators and founders who are very ambitious, And I really would, it's kind of a privilege to hopefully play my small part in helping in any way with those operators and those entrepreneurs. And this is, and we've deliberately kind of tried to stay close while we were there. One of my mantras is that I try really, really hard to never say no for a cold outreach from a Kiwi while I was in the Bay Area.
Right.
I tried really hard. I may not have done every single outreach, but that was one thing. And I've really noticed the change in trajectory and the change in momentum in the last, really even the last 7 to 8 years, in the level of ambition and the type of companies here. And I think the talent and the hard work has always been there, but it just takes that many reps for this ecosystem to slowly build out.
Are there specific companies that stand out to you as being shining examples?
Absolutely. I think the best example I can think of is Hota. Yeah. They are, I think, culturally, also they are one of the companies that most closely resemble a kind of a successful, ambitious tech company.
Just for our viewers who aren't familiar with Hota designed smart collars for livestock that can help to control, so you can remotely control the positioning of livestock without fences, which is remarkable technology.
It's actually black magic in a way, because on your phone, it takes a few hours to train a cow, and then afterwards, through sound and lights, on your iPhone, you just tap a paddock, and a few minutes later, cows start moving.
Yeah.
But the exciting thing of Hota is not just that, but actually once you have that, that is actually the entryway into helping you to manage your farm overall.
Right.
Managing the pasture, because they say, the dairy farmers are not they're not really raising cows, they're raising grass.
Yeah.
Because grass and pasture is the most important piece. I think Hota is an example. There's another company, Tracksuit, that's really, really exciting, and that's like very classic B2B SaaS with a lot of AI infusion. There's another company called Aura that's also doing really, really well. Partly, that's based out of Christchurch. They are kind of like the organizing the world's car parts information, empowering a lot of really great companies around the world. And so I could go on, but I think any of these companies, I can really place them as, I think, not just world class, but really world leading in what they do.
Are there any cultural or regulatory barriers that you think remain that are inhibiting New Zealand's tech or startup industries?
I think that the New Zealand culture has a lot of advantages in terms of the way that we just focus on building what's valuable. We're heads down, and we are great to work with, and very disarming. And there's a lot of great things about it. And I think that one of the trends I've noticed that's changing more, and I think that we can always do more of, is that really thinking about New Zealand market not really as a market. It is really the starting point. And that if you want to build a world-changing company to bring a lot of wealth and talent back to New Zealand, it's really about looking at the world as your market, looking at the US or looking at Southeast Asia and all these different markets as how you target find your target customers. I think that's really important. And I think along with that, I think goes hand in hand is having the burning desire to win for your employees, for your company, for your shareholders, and ultimately for New Zealand. And I think that you can never have less of that. And I think the same can be said of any company in the world. But I think when you combine New Zealand's the traits that makes Kiwi so special of hard work and inventiveness with this very global mindset and this very empathetic but high standards and high performance and the desire to win and do your best work, I think that's a really amazing combination. And I think I now see a lot of companies that's going in that direction.
You have joined the board of NZME as an independent director. I should say, for the sake of disclosure, that I am employed by NZME. What would be your observations about the state of New Zealand media?
I think New Zealand, the state of the media obviously is first is characterized by the fact that we are a very small market. And so I think we are, over the past many years, naturally are starting to see more consolidation as just how many outlets and how many players does a market naturally support. I think that's not just New Zealand. I think that's just the nature of the size of the market. I also think that New Zealand has a really, really strong local identity of who we are as a people and what do we really care about. I mean, like you talk to any American about the All Blacks and they would be super confused. Yeah. And so I think because of that, I think I'm reasonably bullish that there will always be a need for news that is catered to the local audience for New Zealand, and I think that's good. I think that's a really positive thing. And I think otherwise, I think there is the other thing was the New Zealand media. I would say is that for industries like the media, the common pattern that we typically see is that things typically happen overseas first, and then they kind of trickle down to start happening here. And I think that's largely what we've seen in the New Zealand media landscape over the last even 5 years, is that things that have happened quite a few years ago are starting to happen here. The advantage of that is that you can kind of see how things evolve, and it's not really rocket science. And so I think a lot of the playbooks and a lot of things that really helps to build a really strong media company, helping to evolve them into a digital audience company to better serve the rapidly changing user needs that's in these digital channels, is actually very clear because they have played out. Yeah. And I think that's really exciting. It's partly why I decided to join the NZME board, is to really help to navigate one of the really important media players through this change.